Hello, good morning. Welcome to your Mental Hygiene Monday. That's what I'm calling it. Because on Mondays we have our Good Thinking Live show. Welcome to Good Thinking Live. I'm so glad you're here. If you are here, hold on. We have some things that we need to shut down. Hold on a second. We got to shut this quiet thing down. Another computer is running. So that tells me that we are live. Welcome to Good Thinking Live. And if you are here, please let me know that you're here. Let me know where you're from. And this is going to be a lot of fun today, a lot of participation. And at the very end, if you remind me, I will give you what I think is a business idea for someone, because I want someone to do this. So Good Thinking Live is the weekly show right here on LinkedIn Live, Mondays, 9 a.m., 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. When I say 9 a.m., I mean Pacific time, because I'm here in the Pacific Northwest of the USA. And also streaming live on YouTube. So if you want to get notifications, I don't think LinkedIn Live gives notifications, but YouTube Live does. And you can go to Becky Saltzman and smash that bell and get notifications that most Mondays we are here live on Good Thinking Live. Welcome, good thinkers. Today's going to be cool because we're going to get deep into critical thinking and arguments. I would probably say that this is kind of an advanced good thinking show, like an advanced critical thinking show. So I'm going to welcome a few people here. Welcome Sherry from Ohio and Stephen. Greetings from 10 miles due north of Tracktown, USA. Oh, that's a good one. Pam, good morning. Welcome from Crowley, Texas. And Siba from Beirut, Lebanon. We are getting people from all over the world, which is fantastic. The best thing about this show, and this is a show, as the regular good thinkers know, and new thinkers will soon learn, that gives us just a little bit of time each week to set aside all the time that we're told what to think, to devote time to our own mental hygiene, to give ourselves time to improve how to think. Devora, welcome from Muncie, New York. And I am so glad everyone's here. All right, today's show is going to be on arguments. And it's not really what you think. I mean, it really wouldn't be the default way of thinking about arguments. So when you think about an argument, you might think like this. But I'm talking about, and if you think about an argument like a cookie, then you look at the ingredients of an argument, then it helps kind of frame what we're talking about with arguments. And arguments are really how we make decisions. When you really look at the ingredients of the argument, it's really how we make decisions. So start with this. Think about a decision that you have to make right now. Okay, think about what is it? Is it a business decision? Is it a medical decision? Is it a relationship decision? You don't have to tell us what the decision is, but be very specific about the decision that you're thinking about making right now, and put that, whether it's a business decision, a medical decision, or a relationship decision, in the chat. Why? Oh, Marcio, hi from Carmel, Indiana. Welcome. But the reason that to put the decision, the kind of decision in the chat, is I want you to kind of keep that decision at the front of your mind as we go through these arguments. All right, back to the argument like a cookie. All right, here are the ingredients for an argument. And we are not talking, and this is from a very, very critical thinking perspective, which is different. We'll talk about some other perspectives, but this is from a critical thinking perspective. Sometimes you're the one trying to say, hey, taste the cookie I made. Taste it, it's good. Taste it, taste it, taste it. And sometimes someone's trying to feed you the cookie. So this is really about how to evaluate whether the cookie is good for you, not just whether the cookie is delicious. Now, if the cookie is delicious, that may persuade you to eat the cookie. And we're saving that kind of thing, the persuasive argument part, for a different time. And if you would like to have a good thinking episode on the persuasive part, like how to make someone eat that cookie, let me know in the chat, because I have a very good friend who is a persuasive, like a world famous persuasive expert. Let me know in the chat if you are wanting that, but that's not what today is. All right. First of all, what is your favorite cookie? And if you're coming from somewhere outside of the US, is it like a traditional chocolate chip cookie, or do you have some cookies from where you are that are even like your favorite? So if you put your favorite cookie in the chat, you will get at least one rubber chicken. So put your favorite cookie in the chat. What are your favorite cookies? All right. Okay, so what is an argument? What are the ingredients of an argument? Doesn't that sound kind of like an obvious question? Well, the ingredients of an argument are like if you were to take the chocolate chips and maybe the sugar and the butter, whatever, the ingredients of an argument are the evidence, and the evidence supports the premises. So all the evidence, each piece of evidence supports the premises, and the premises support and lead to the conclusion. And that whole thing, evidence, premises, and conclusion, those are the ingredients of an argument. All right, so we've got oatmeal raisin, oatmeal chocolate chip, blueberry cookies. No one, what about ginger? What about ginger? Doesn't no one like ginger? I love oatmeal raisin. I'm going to confess to you, I am not the hugest chocolate fan. I know. That's not right. You're weird if you don't like chocolate. I don't really like chocolate. Is there anyone else out there that does not like chocolate that much? Let me know, because I need to know. Is there anyone like me in the world? I mean, it's fine, but I don't really love it. It's not where I would go. I would do an oatmeal raisin in a heartbeat. I might do a ginger. I'd love the ginger, especially if there's little pieces of ginger. Blueberry cookies. Ooh, I wonder what a blueberry cookie is. Siba says blueberry cookie. All right. Stephen, I didn't know oatmeal chocolate chip was your favorite. All right, back to arguments. We got the two sides of the argument. We've got the ingredients of the argument. Let me know in the chat if you would like a future Good Thinking episode on persuasion. Just put yes, persuasion. Yes, persuasion. Then I'll use that to entice my friend to get on the show and give us a whole Good Thinking on persuasion. All right. So someone's trying to convince you of something. And so is a good argument, sorry, what? Wish I didn't. Okay, Sherry says wish I did. Okay, Pam, I knew I loved you. You're not a huge fan of chocolate. Fellow non-chocolate lover. Okay, I'm can't get distracted with the comments. We have to get going, but keep distracting me, please. All right, if an argument persuades you, is that a good argument? Is the fact that you're persuaded or you're able to persuade, if you can persuade someone that your argument, to accept your argument, does that make your argument a good argument? Yes or no? Yes or no? Does that make an argument a good argument? So Devora says yes to persuasion. Marcio says yes to persuasion. Okay, we're going to definitely have another one on persuasion. And if I can't convince him, I've done a lot of classes on persuasion, but I might even get the guru himself. All right, yes, persuasion, Pam. We're going to do another one on persuasion. Today's not about persuasion. Today is on critical thinking and how to evaluate what is a good argument and what is a bad argument. People go, ooh, I don't like that. That isn't nice. This isn't about being nice. This is about being rational. And the difference between critical thinking and other forms of thinking is that it is really based on rationality. It's not always the most comfortable. It's not always the most pleasant. And it's okay to later add in other kinds of thinking. But the key is to start with critical thinking. All right. Yes. Do you think that if you have made a persuasive argument, that it is a good argument? From a persuasion standpoint, yes, you are correct. From a critical thinking standpoint, that is not a necessary ingredient. No. But what are the necessary ingredients of a good argument from a critical thinking standpoint? And this is really deep in this is why I call this kind of an advanced critical thinking course, good thinking show. All right. And this is what we get into in our advanced critical thinking workshops. But this is our fun to get started. All right. So let's talk about what makes a bad argument. Then I'll give you the ingredients for a good argument. And then we're going to go through some arguments and you are going to weigh something different, whether it's strong or weak. And here is what I want to say. A good or bad argument is different than a strong or weak argument. What? A good or bad argument is different than a valid or invalid argument. What? These are all different things. So I'll give you the ingredients for a good argument later, but first we'll talk about some bad arguments. A bad argument is one where the premises are not directly related to the conclusion. And you know this when you hear someone make an argument and you go, what are you talking about? Like, what does this have to do with that? People make those arguments all the time where the premise doesn't really have to do, it's not related, it's not relevant. You know, that was one of the R's of critical thinking. It's not relevant to the conclusion. All right. So how many of you have heard an argument and you were like, what does that have to do with anything? You're trying to make a point. You're starting with a conclusion and someone says, well, I believe this. And then they give you all the premises to support that. And you're like, okay. So let's say your team member, Leon, is trying to make a case that you shouldn't have your product distributed at Amazon. And it shouldn't be distributed at Amazon. And then Sarah says, Leon doesn't know where our product should be distributed. He's in finance. That's the ad hominem fallacy. And fallacies are how sometimes we make bad arguments, because the fact that Leon's in finance doesn't have anything to do with whether the product should be at Amazon or not. So this is where you want to be careful about separating the person from the argument. Otherwise, you could succumb to bad fallacies. There's a whole bunch of fallacies. If you would like, we did an episode on data fallacies, but if you would like an episode just on logical fallacies and how to avoid them, put yes, logical fallacies, or you could just put yes, fallacies, because I'm trying to collect, I'm kind of trying to find out what people want for the good thinking for our Mental Hygiene Monday. All right. Another bad argument is when the premises are just not that important because they really don't support the conclusion. Like also what's your point? Here's a circular argument, and you sometimes hear this. This is an example of a circular argument. I say to you, hey, I'm Rana's best employee. I'm sure of this because Rana told me, and I know she wouldn't lie to her best employee. So I'm Rana's best employee. And I know this because she told me that I'm her best employee, and I'm sure she wouldn't lie to her best employee. This is a circular argument. It's not a good argument. And because you have to assume the premise. So Rana told me that I'm her best employee, and I know Rana wouldn't lie to me. I know that Rana wouldn't lie to her best employee. So you have to assume that the premise to assume the conclusion. Does that make sense? It's a circular argument. Like if I said, I'm Rana's best employee because she told me, that would be different than I am Rana's best employee. I know this because she told me and she wouldn't lie to her best employee. That's a circular argument. All right. Yes to logical fallacies. Yes to Pam says, LinkedIn user, I don't know who. I'm sorry, sometimes when I'm streaming, it doesn't tell me the name of the person. So when I get to the comments, I'll be able to say, oh, that was you. Devora says, yes, fallacies. Good. So we'll do, I love fallacies. Fallacies is a huge ingredient in critical thinking. All right. Also, what else to look out for? Look out for arguments that confuse correlation with causation. And we hear this a lot. Oh, correlation is not causation. But it's super hard with our brains. It's like, we want to make these patterns and we see things happening at the same time. And we know that the price of cheese in Switzerland has nothing to do with the sale of Nikes in New York, but those seem to correlate, and we just can't help making that pattern when we see things correlate. So what we do is we start going, yeah, that makes sense. I could see how cheese would affect the sale of shoes in New York. And then we start finding reasons to make that match. For example, our sale of sunglasses definitely goes up with the sale of more ice cream. So how can we figure that makes sense, right? Why? What common thing comes to mind when you see, oh, the sale of sunglasses definitely goes up when we sell more ice cream or with the sale of ice cream? What's the first word that comes to your mind? Put it in the chat. You're going to get like 10 rubber chickens if you put it in the chat. Summer. So then you say, oh, we should offer free ice cream at our sunglass hut. Okay, fine. That's an example of correlation is not causation. And the final one, there's a lot of reasons for bad arguments. We've got to get to the good ones, and then we got to get to like picking apart strong and weak arguments. It's a bad argument when the conclusion just restates the premises. And we see this a ton. So go on Twitter. You want to see bad arguments? Go on Twitter. Sun. Oh, Michael Allen Harrison says sun. Ooh, okay. He gets, because sun is like summer. So Michael gets, we got to support all the rubber chickens. They're all falling. Rubber chickens falling from the sky. Michael. All right. Rubber chickens. Sun. So when the premises just restate the conclusion, for example, we don't need another liberal like Susan Silkworm in the Senate. All she wants to do is throw money at every problem and create more government bureaucracies. Her policies are not conservative enough. Okay? So if you're saying that we don't need Susan because she's a liberal, her policies aren't conservative enough, that is when the premise doesn't really support the conclusion. Because, okay, why is that bad? So that's an argument you see a lot. And that comes from having started with the conclusion that liberal is worse or conservative is worse. And you go on Twitter, you want to see bad arguments, you can go on Twitter all the time. And that's a hint that if you want a business idea at the end of this, Good Thinking Today, I'll tell you, because it'd be so fun. Hope I can remember. If I don't see it at the end, then I'll probably be like, forget it. All right. Now we're going to get into what makes a good argument. And it really comes down to three main things. What makes a good argument really comes down to three main things. One, the premises or the reasons are plausible. There's good evidence to support that the reasons or the premises are true. So that's number one. So you got to think, okay, wait, what are the points? What are the reasons he's giving for this or she's giving for this conclusion? Is the evidence there? Is it plausible? Is it true? So that has to do with, the reliability of evidence. Another critical thinking. And number two, the premises or the reasons have to be more plausible than the conclusion. Because if the conclusion is more plausible than the premise, then it's like you're holding up a foundation with it's like reverse foundation. You're not really, you need to buttress your conclusion with plausible premises. All right. And then the third is, and this is getting a little into the higher level critical thinking. My first rubber chickens. The argument must be valid or strong. Now, this is what's weird. We're going to get into what makes a strong argument. And that's not the same as what makes a good argument. Stick with me. We're going to get into this in just a minute, and then we'll be done. And you can go about your week with all kinds of good thinking, your curiosity elevated, and your mental hygiene in order. All right. So an argument must be valid or strong. Well, doesn't it seem like a strong argument is a good argument, or a valid argument is a good argument? Can you have a valid argument that isn't strong? No. Yeah. Yes. I mean, yes, you can actually. And this is where it gets really tricky. And again, if you are, I need to ask you this. Please, please, please tell me this. How many of you have watched one of my my LinkedIn learning courses? Have you watched any of my LinkedIn learning courses? I've got several on decision making, but so any of them, we've got Applied Curiosity. So I think I have 6 courses. How many of you have watched my LinkedIn learning courses? And how many of you have watched my critical thinking for better judgment and decision making LinkedIn learning course? And I'm asking for a very specific reason because I'm trying to see if there would be interest in an advanced critical thinking course for business and for life, for both, but for business because that's LinkedIn's platform. All right. Let me know, A, have you watched any courses? And B, yes, advanced critical thinking, or too heady, too much. All right, let me know in the chat because I'm trying to make a case for it. or even for myself. I'm trying to create the evidence to see if I should conclude that I should make a advanced critical thinking course. All right. Now, we've got those three conditions. So we've got the premises are plausible. We've got the premises have to be more plausible than the conclusion. And we've got that the argument must be either strong or valid. All right. So an argument that is a strong argument is one that is where it's nearly impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false. Now, if the conclusion's true, it's a little different. So just stick with me here. Yes and yes. Definitely yes. I did. Okay, Marcia watched the course. Stephen watched the course and wants an advanced critical thinking course. Yes and yes. Fantastic. But if people say, you know what? No, I'm good. That's okay too. Because you don't want to just seek evidence that supports your pre-existing beliefs and dismiss evidence that does not, even if it's reliable evidence. So if you say, probably wouldn't watch it, probably wouldn't learn much from it, my team wouldn't learn from it. Sometimes these courses are taught in companies. Then let me know too, because why do something that people don't want just because you want it? All right. So a strong argument is one where it's almost impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false. An invalid argument means that it is possible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false at the same time. Let me give you an example. Well, let's skip the example because I'm going to get to the you want to play with this. So I'm not going to tell you. Like maybe you would, okay, I'll give you an example. So maybe you would say, if Ed gambled away all his money, he would be broke. That's a true premise, right? Then you say, Ed is broke. That's a true premise too. So then you say, therefore, Ed gambled away all his money. That could be a false conclusion. So that is an example of an invalid argument where the premises might be true, but the conclusion is false. But a valid argument is where the premises are true in the way that it makes the conclusion impossible to be false. All right. Again, deep, but just get the beginning and then we're going to get into, so now we're going to focus for the last, how much time do we have? Okay, this is perfect because we want to end right at the bottom of the hour. So we've got Fiona, yes and yes, fantastic. All right, so now we're going to get into see if you can distinguish between a good argument and a bad argument, but we're going to do that by scraping away the issue of validity and invalidity, and we're just going to get straight into, is this argument strong or weak? Now, bear in mind, you could have a weak argument that is still a good argument if it's valid. If I had more time for more. See, this is why a course would be good, I think. But again, don't trust me. Tell me what you think. Would you learn from an advanced critical thinking course? All right. Here we go. Are you ready for your example? So now here's where you got to pay attention. And there's going to be chickens are going to fly. All right. So here we go. I'm going to give you a question. I'm going to give you a question. Yeah. And we're trying to make a decision because all of this comes down to making decisions. All of this comes down to making decisions. And that's what it's all about. Like everything we do, making decisions. I think we make 35,000 decisions in a day. So all of this comes down to making decisions. So I'm going to ask you a question and then I'm going to give you conclusions with premises. So I'm going to give you an argument, right? The ingredients. And you're going to tell me if it's a strong argument or a weak argument. All right. So we're going to put like number one question, and then you put strong or weak. And we'll do a few and then we'll wrap up because you got to get back to your day. All right. So question, should university education be free to all students? Now, if you're ready to go and to say yes, that's not the point. I'm going to give you some arguments. And you are going to tell me if they're weak or strong. So this will be number one, strong, number one, weak. All right. Number one, no, because too much education can make potential hires overqualified and less employable. So think about the premise. Think about it needs to support the argument. It should be relate to the argument. The premises should be plausibly true. They should be stronger than the conclusion. Is this a weak argument or a strong argument? Number one, weak or strong? I want to give some chickens away. But I'm going to keep going, and because sometimes there's a little delay and I want to see your answers, but I'm going to tell you that this is a weak argument because the statement doesn't really address overqualifications. I mean, the statement addresses, should university education be free to all students? Yes. Marcio says 1 week. Absolutely. Rubber chickens for Marcio, because yes, of course, this is a weak argument, but it's not necessarily a weak argument because it's wrong. It's just a weak argument, right. It's a weak argument because the statement talking about potential hires being overqualified has nothing to do with university education being free. So we've had Pam says weak, Fiona says weak, yay, Siba says weak, yay, number 1 week, all the rubber chickens go to all the good thinkers. Okay, this is good. Ready for how about this argument? Same thing, same question. Should university education be free to all students? Next question. No, because research shows that students who are not required to pay tuition tend to slack off and learn less while earning their degree. Is number 2 a weak or strong argument? So I'm going to read it one more time. Should education be free? Blah, blah, blah. Number 2, no, because research shows that students who are not required to pay tuition tend to slack off and learn less while earning their degree. Number 2, weak or strong argument? Give you a second to think. All right. Well, actually, I wish there wasn't a delay in the line because I don't want to say, but it's like, because this is a hard one. Actually, this is a strong argument because we're assuming that the research is reliable because we don't have access to that research. So you could say, if someone was arguing with you, could say, strong. Fiona says strong. Steven says strong. Marcia says weak. It's actually a strong argument. Pam says strong. Siva says strong. It's a strong argument because if you assume that the evidence is reliable, because you don't, in the moment you might not say, you could say, well, assuming that is reliable evidence, that's a really good point. Tim says stronger. It is the statement about the research that helps, but not definitive. Exactly. So if you had to assume that the evidence, that's a really good point. If you had to assume that the evidence was correct, this isn't about evaluating evidence, though. This is about evaluating the strength of the argument, the strong or weakness of the argument. Now, evaluating the evidence is a whole nother process, right? But that is a really good point. This is a strong argument because it really addresses the exact question. It has premise that are supported by evidence, and whether that evidence is reliable or not is a different question. All right. How about this one? The third one. Should university education be free? Blah, blah, blah. The answer is yes. The inability to afford higher education and student debt are 2 of the biggest barriers to citizens reaching their potential and making meaningful contributions to society. Is that a strong or weak argument? I'll read it again. I wrote these down because I can't remember anything. Yes, the inability to afford higher education and student debt are 2 of the biggest barriers to citizens reaching their potential and making meaningful contribution to society. Is that a strong or weak argument saying yes to should university education be free to all students? Weak or strong? Number 3. Well, strong. Marcio says strong. Correct. Strong. Number 3, strong. Absolutely. Because clearly that has a premises that directly is relevant to the conclusion and is supported by evidence. Now, whether that evidence is reliable or not, then you go digging on to how to determine reliability. But again, that's why the advanced critical thinking. And in our critical thinking presentations, we address sometimes, in our workshops, we go deep, deep, deep. In our presentations, we definitely give people tools, tips, and tricks that they can use and move forward to using critical thinking in every aspect of their life. Okay, so Fiona says strong, Siva says strong, Steven says strong. Yeah, number 3 is a really strong argument. But you can also see how the conclusion, yes or no, whether you agree with it or not, because you might have opinions about whether university education should be free or not. But you can start to see that you can evaluate an argument regardless of whether you agree with the conclusion. And that is a key component. So if someone was using persuasive techniques with you, authority or consistency or social proof or reciprocity or likability, some of the principles of persuasion, that isn't a measure of whether an argument is a strong argument or a weak argument, nor is it a measure of whether it's a good argument or a bad argument. The validity of the arguments is really like a topic of, it's like hilarious. It's actually crazy how to figure out a valid argument, but it's doable, and we've got some tips and tricks to help you. Anyway, thank you so much. I hope you got something out of this. Did you guys get something out of this? Hopefully this was good mental hygiene for today, and good thinkers can show up every Monday, almost every Monday, unless I'm like really busy doing something or we get to travel and I get to go somewhere. Every Monday, 9 a.m. right here on LinkedIn Live, 9 a.m. Pacific time or 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which we're going to get spiced up and kind of sexied up. It's a little bit whatever, but live on YouTube at Becky Saltzman. And I'm so, so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. And thank you for all the rubber chickens that you earned and deserved. Have a great, fabulous, good thinking week. Peace out.